I knew something was off when I saw Lila's name on the building access logs 3 hours before her official start date. No welcome email, no announcement, just a fresh VP badge registered to the CEO's daughter and a calendar block titled Strategic Alignment, Legacy Roles Review. That's corporate for Who Can I Fire to Feel Powerful? Still, I stayed late that night, like I always did, combing through the compliance checklist for our $275 million client renewal, the kind of contract that doesn't just keep the lights on, it is the power grid. Every clause had to align, every continuity protocol had to be airtight, and I was the only one left who knew how all the gears turned together. They didn't see me. Not really. Not the C-suite, not the parade of junior PMs with their MBA flashcards. I wasn't a name on a whiteboard or a voice in the strategy room. I was just Dana from Ops, the person who made the client's disaster recovery audit pass every single year, who fixed it when someone forgot to report a change in SOX controls, who trained the replacements for the people who got promoted over me. And every time I raised a flag, I heard the same line, "We'll circle back." Nobody ever did, but I didn't need applause. I had access to the files, to the language buried in the master service agreement, to the workflows that Lila Benton didn't even know existed. She wore her last name like body armor, clicking around in stilettos that echoed louder than her actual ideas. Meanwhile, I was down in the digital basement with a flashlight and a shovel, making sure the floor didn't collapse under her Gucci heels. By the way, if you've made it this far into the story and you're already picking up the scent of corporate doom, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and like the video. It helps more than you think. And honestly, it keeps stories like this coming from people who've lived them. We appreciate every single one of you. That night, as I finalized the service continuity matrix and archived the rollback protocols, I caught myself doing something embarrassing. I smiled. Not because I liked the work, but because no one else could do it. When the systems guy accidentally deleted an access token last quarter, I was the one who restored the environment from an offline archive. When legal forgot to include a signatory line on the Q3 amendment, I redlined it and pushed it through before the client noticed. My name was nowhere, but my fingerprints were all over the survival of this place. That should have made me feel powerful. Instead, it made me a target. At 9:13 p.m., I got a Slack message from someone I didn't know. Lila B. No greeting, just, please prepare documentation of your core responsibilities for strategic review. Due EOD tomorrow. Strategic review? I laughed. I'd been here 9 years, and I'd become the strategy for that account. Lila was 3 weeks into a VP title she didn't earn and was already collecting names like scalps. But fine. Let her swing the axe. I wasn't afraid of titles because I knew something she didn't. She thought I was an employee, but I wasn't on payroll. I was a contracted implementation lead, tied to the master service agreement with a clause so strict, legal once nicknamed it the Dana Doctrine. No substitutions, no removal, not without 45 days notice and client sign-off. My existence in this ecosystem wasn't just important, it was mandatory. But she didn't read the contract. She just read LinkedIn headlines. So I drafted my documentation like she asked. I made it so thorough it could pass for an internal audit. I sent it at 4:59 p.m. sharp the next day, along with a copy of the SOW for the current year. 2 minutes later, Lila scheduled a 5 p.m. meeting, just her and me. Subject line, next steps. I already knew what it meant. Not because I'm psychic, but because people like her always mistake silence for submission. And I'd been quiet a long, long time. The thing about nepotism is it doesn't knock. It barges in wearing a $2,800 blazer and an inherited sense of purpose. Lila Benton didn't even wait for her corporate headshot to hit the intranet before she started swinging her title like a wrecking ball. VP of Strategic Operations, she announced at her first all-hands Zoom, like she'd just been appointed Secretary of State. She was 27, with 1 year of actual work experience and a resume built entirely on advisory roles at her dad's golf buddies' companies. The girl couldn't spell SOW, let alone understand what it meant. By 10:00 a.m. on Monday, she'd sent a company-wide request for updated org charts and redundancy reports. Redundancy. That's code for, tell me who's been here too long. Her second message was more personal. Subject, legacy role audit. She asked department heads to provide a list of employees and contractors whose titles didn't map cleanly to her new vision for scalable, future-focused leadership infrastructure. My name came up first. Of course it did. It didn't help that I'd never played the game. I didn't do happy hours or LinkedIn claps or collaboration coffee chats. I was the one who told new hires where the bodies were buried, digitally speaking, and how to avoid stepping on live wires. If something broke, I fixed it. If something was misfiled, I found it. If someone forgot to follow compliance, I patched it up before legal ever knew. But none of that showed up in a slide deck. And slide decks were Lila's love language. Wednesday afternoon, her assistant, some poor guy named Jesse, who looked like he hadn't slept since orientation, asked me to briefly summarize your role and value add for the strategic ops function. I replied with one line. My value is documented in the Master Client Agreement, Clause 7.3c. Please consult legal. 10 minutes later, Jesse booked a meeting with me and Lila for Friday at 5 p.m. That's the thing with people like her. They think late Friday meetings intimidate you. Like I haven't spent the last 9 years of my life watching 5 o'clock become midnight just to keep someone else's million-dollar mistake off the client's radar. I wasn't scared of Lila, but I was getting irritated because she didn't just threaten my job. She threatened the infrastructure, the fragile, undocumented, stitched-together workflow we'd built to keep the biggest client in our company happy. And not to be dramatic, but she threatened my pride. Thursday, I started getting pings from IT. My access logs were being reviewed. Then legal sent me a courtesy note reminding me that contractual engagements are subject to periodic evaluation. They never send those unless someone's already pushing for termination and trying to pre-cover their ass. Classic paper trail behavior. I smiled. Not because I was amused, but because I'd seen this movie before. They think they're being discreet, but every email is a breadcrumb, and I bake those into a full damn cake. That night, I stayed up till 2, rewriting the SOW and its appendices. I wasn't just covered, I was insulated. There were 3 layers of contractual protection around my engagement, including a rider that named me explicitly as a continuity requirement. It didn't matter if Lila was CEO, CFO, or Queen of England. She couldn't remove me without written notice to the client and a 45-day review window. And as of Friday morning, no such notice had been filed. Still, I walked into that 5 p.m. meeting with my binder in hand. Black cover, no labels, just tabs and receipts. I sat down across from Lila in the small glass conference room they use for sensitive transitions. She didn't offer water, didn't ask how I was, just tapped her pen on the table and said, "We're going to restructure some functions, and I'd like to understand what it is you actually do here." I paused, just long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I said, "Everything you haven't broken yet." Her face tightened, like she wasn't used to being spoken to by someone who didn't ask for her approval. She opened her laptop. "That's not very constructive." "No," I said, "it's operational." There was a beat of silence, thick with tension. She didn't like that, but she also didn't know what to do with it, because deep down, she could feel it. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't begging, and I damn sure wasn't scared. That's when she leaned forward, locked eyes with me, and said 6 words that would detonate everything by morning. "Pack your desk. We're moving forward." She didn't even knock, just strutted in like she'd been waiting her whole life to say it. "Pack your desk. We're going in a different direction." 4:57. 3 minutes before close of business, when HR has already left and IT is halfway through happy hour. Classic rookie move if it weren't so goddamn calculated. She was trying to catch me off guard, catch the old dinosaur without a plan. She didn't have a termination letter, no exit paperwork, no HR rep. Just her smug face and a box from the supply room with 1 flap missing and a giant Staples logo screaming cheap optics. Behind her, Jesse hovered with a tablet and a nervous look, clearly pulled into this last-minute power play like an intern drafted into a war he didn't understand. My screen flickered. Access revoked. Email logged out. VPN dropped. My badge buzzed in my purse and vibrated twice. Their way of telling you it's dead now. That was it. Just a digital guillotine and a cardboard casket for my 9 years of invisible labor. No explanation. No thank you. No one from legal. Which was ironic, because they were about to need all the lawyers they could find. I didn't say a word. Didn't ask why, I already knew. She wanted to make a show of it. Show that she could come in and disrupt the culture. Show the board that she had teeth. Show her father that she didn't need training wheels. She thought I'd argue, maybe cry, maybe raise my voice. Instead, I stood, pulled my binder from the second drawer, black, zippered, thick with 9 years of decisions they never noticed, and dropped it into the box like it was the only thing worth salvaging. I left the coffee mug, the pens, even my sweater. I wouldn't be cold where I was going. Jesse tried to mumble something, maybe an apology, maybe an instruction, but Lila cut him off with a glare. "We'll arrange next steps in writing," she said, like that was supposed to make it sound official. It wasn't. They hadn't even checked the terms of my engagement. I walked past the ops floor, the place I used to command without needing to speak. Nobody looked up. Maybe they didn't know yet. Or maybe they were too scared to make eye contact with a ghost. In the lobby, I saw the security guy reach for his phone. He was checking if I was flagged. I waved my deactivated badge at him and said, "Already dead," like it was a punchline to a joke only I understood. He didn't stop me. Outside, the air hit different. Cold, but not cruel. I sat in my car, placed the box in the passenger seat, and stared at the building like it had personally betrayed me. Then I laughed. Short, sharp, hollow. Because what just happened wasn't just dumb, it was dangerous. They didn't fire an employee, they tried to terminate a clause baked into a contract that was holding up a $275 million client renewal like a single screw in a sagging ceiling, and they didn't even read it. Or worse, they thought I wouldn't remember it. I drove home in silence. Didn't call anyone, didn't draft an email, just opened my laptop, connected to my personal cloud vault, and pulled up the statement of work for the current fiscal year. There it was, bold and simple. Clause 7.3c. Named project officers may not be removed or substituted without 45-day notice and written approval from the client. Violation constitutes material breach. 45 days. I'd been given 3 minutes. That binder in my passenger seat? It wasn't a souvenir. It was evidence. Every system escalation I handled without formal ticketing. Every internal control Lila streamlined without routing through compliance. Every time I documented the things someone else forgot. They thought they boxed me out. They didn't realize I was the box. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was angry. Anger is a short fuse. What I felt was colder, deeper, heavier. The kind of fury that doesn't explode, it settles into your spine and keeps you sitting perfectly still at your kitchen table until the sun comes up. My laptop was open, my coffee had gone cold twice, and I was staring at the same paragraph over and over again, not because I didn't believe it was there, but because I needed to feel its weight every time my eyes passed over it. Clause 7.3c. Named project officers may not be removed or substituted without 45-day notice and written approval from the client. It wasn't buried, wasn't written in fine print. It was 3 inches down from the section header, bolded, signed off by both our counsel and theirs. Lila had walked into my office at 4:57 p.m. and swung a sword through a wire that held up nearly every compliance and continuity deliverable for our largest client. And she didn't even check if it was plugged into the building. See? That's what happens when you give a title to someone who doesn't know the difference between a vendor and a named party. I wasn't hired like the rest of the staff. I'd been brought in under a very specific statement of work, rolled into the master service agreement as a named project officer, a condition precedent to the contract's continuity clause. My role wasn't payroll, it was prerequisite, but Lila never read the agreement. Hell, I doubt she even knew where we stored them. Most of the people in the executive wing wouldn't know a continuity clause if it bit them between the eyes. That's the problem with inherited power. You don't learn how things are built, so you have no idea what happens when you start tearing things down. Around 6:12 a.m., I opened my inbox. No messages from legal, no recall notice, not even a digital pat on the back from HR. I typed out exactly 1 sentence and attached 1 document. No sarcasm, no commentary, no anger. Subject: contract reference. Immediate concern. For your awareness, please find the attached SOW referencing clause 7.3c. Recent developments appear to conflict with agreed terms. Kindly advise. I sent it to 2 people. 1, the client's external legal counsel, someone I dealt with during the initial contract review, someone who once told me, If this thing ever gets shaky, you call me first. And 2, a BCC to my own records. Not for revenge, just for precision. Because I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to call the CEO and threaten to sue or beg for my job back. No. That would have given them the illusion that I believed they still had control. They didn't. The moment Lila gave me that box, she cracked open a clause so essential, so brittle, that the only thing holding the client relationship together now was the question of whether I'd respond. And I had. I shut my laptop, brewed a fresh cup of coffee, and watched the lights start to shift on the street outside. The world didn't know what just shifted, but by noon, they would. Because when your signature appears on the document that keeps $275 million flowing, silence isn't compliance. It's leverage. The email hit inboxes at 8:16 a.m. sharp, flagged red, all caps on the subject line. Material contractual concern, Carver engagement status. That's lawyers speak for. You better respond fast or the sky starts falling. It went to the CEO, every board member, and 2 internal compliance officers, all of whom were still sipping their overpriced lattes in what was supposed to be a routine renewal prep meeting. The timing wasn't accidental. The client's legal team knew exactly when to drop a bomb, right before the execs walk into a conference room they thought they controlled. Inside that glass-walled war room, the mood shifted before the coffee got cold. I wasn't there, but I'd been in enough of those rooms to picture it perfectly. The board chair blinking too fast. The CFO glancing at his assistant like maybe someone sent that to the wrong list. The CEO holding his phone an inch from his face like the pixels would rearrange themselves into a less dangerous version of the truth. The email itself was surgical. To whom it may concern, please confirm that Donna Carver's engagement remains in effect per the terms outlined in Clause 7.3c of the MSA. As this is a material condition of our agreement, any change to her status requires written client approval. Kindly confirm by noon today to avoid further compliance review. Regards. David Selby, Lead Counsel, Ferguson Torres, LLP. No pleasantries, no wiggle room. Just a scalpel across the jugular. The CEO blinked, confused. What is this about? He asked, looking around the room like someone would translate the legalese into something he could spin. But no one moved. Not until Lila, in her tailored cream blazer and smug little half-smile, flipped her laptop open and chirped. Oh, I let her go Friday. We're restructuring legacy positions. It's fine. The room didn't breathe. The board chair looked up slowly from his tablet. You terminated her? She's a contractor, Lila said, breezy. Not even full-time, just a vendor technically. Technically? The CEO repeated, his voice going thinner by the second. Yeah, I mean, we've got people who can pick up her scope. The CFO flinched like he'd been slapped. Then came the words I'd waited almost a decade to hear, spoken not in rage or bravado, but in the quiet panic of a man realizing the wheels just came off the aircraft mid-flight. Tell me, the CEO whispered, staring straight at his daughter, you didn't terminate an active contract. Lila's mouth opened, then shut again. A beat passed. Her eyes darted down to her screen, scrolling fast. Too fast. She was looking for a clause she didn't know existed until that morning, trying to find some version of events where she could pretend this was a misunderstanding instead of a torpedo she'd personally launched into the hull. No one told me there was a clause like that, she finally said, a voice sharper now, defensive. You didn't ask, the compliance officer said flatly. A moment later, someone in legal forwarded the original statement of work to the group. It was all there in black and white. Clause 7.3c. Dana Carver named explicitly, and the required 45-day notice with client sign-off circled in digital red. The silence wasn't awkward. It was nuclear. And that's when the client's second email landed, this one even colder. Pending written clarification on Ms. Carver's status, Ferguson Torres recommends halting all renewal processing and freezing further client-side onboarding. Please treat this as immediate until resolved. $275 million. Frozen. Just like that. In the corner of the room, Lila stopped typing. No more half-smile, no more voice, just the beginning of a very long morning and the first visible crack in a porcelain ego that had never seen a real consequence until now. The moment legal opened the SOW and saw my name in bold under the continuity clause, the room shifted from confusion to damage control so fast you could practically hear the blood drain from the CEO's face. I wasn't on some back-channel project list. I wasn't a sub-vendor you could swap out like a broken printer. I was a named requirement, and they'd pulled me without warning, without protocol, and worst of all, without telling the client. By 10:02 a.m., internal legal had logged my contract in the breach register. A redacted copy was hand-walked to the general counsel, who flagged it to the full board with one sentence that read more like a throat punch than a memo. Immediate compliance exposure due to unauthorized contractor termination in violation of MSA continuity clause. 10 minutes after that, the client responded again. Short, lethal. All renewal proceedings are paused effective immediately. Onboarding for new services is suspended pending written assurance of continuity compliance. No further actions will be taken until this matter is resolved to our satisfaction. The email was marked high importance, all caps. This wasn't a hiccup. This was a hemorrhage. The renewal meeting, scheduled for noon, complete with catered lunch and branded folders, was canceled with a 2-word update. Postponed indefinitely. And I know for a fact the EVP of sales nearly vomited when he heard. He'd been counting on that $275 million renewal to hit this quarter. Bonus season was around the corner. And now? Now it was ice water down the spine of every executive who'd ever dismissed ops as something invisible. They tried calling me. First, it was a perfunctory email from HR. We'd love to clarify the terms of your engagement. No apology, no responsibility, just an olive branch dipped in liability prep. I ignored it. Then a text from the CEO's assistant. Mr. Benton would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you directly. Are you available today? I let it sit unread. Then came the call. It was around 11:42 a.m. when my phone rang. I recognized the number. Personal cell, not routed through corporate channels. That alone told me they were sweating. I let it ring 4 times, then declined. He left a voicemail. His voice was lower than usual, words slower, like he was trying to rehearse sincerity but didn't speak the language. Dana, I want to apologize for how things were handled. I was unaware of the specifics of your contract, and, well, obviously this has become a larger issue than it should have been. I would really appreciate a moment to speak, to understand how we can move forward here. Please call me when you have a moment. I listened to it twice, not because I was considering calling back, but because it felt like vindication, soft, stammering corporate vindication from a man who finally realized he'd let a storm loose in his own house. But I didn't respond. Because I didn't owe them anything, not my explanation, not my emotional labor, not my trust. They threw me out like a spare part, and now they wanted the engine back because the car wouldn't start. Let them sweat. Let the silence stretch until they felt it in their bones. The longer I stayed quiet, the louder that contract clause screamed through every floor of their glass building. They thought they were playing chess with someone who only knew checkers. But I built the board they're standing on, and right now I was watching them fall through it. They didn't call me from a company line. It came from a blocked number, routed through someone's personal device, probably to avoid detection, or maybe just to skip protocol for once in their lives. It was a board member, not the CEO. A woman I'd spoken to twice before in my entire tenure, both times during audit season. This time, her voice was clipped, but not cold. Dana, we'd like to ask for your perspective, privately, off record, for now. There was no arrogance in her tone, no corporate lingo, no spin, just the kind of directness that only shows up when people realize they've lit a fuse next to the company gas line, and now they need the one person who knows where the shutoff valve is. I didn't gloat, didn't mention the 47 hours of silence I'd given them after being publicly humiliated and wrongfully removed. I simply said, I'll send over documentation. Not opinions, not theories, just receipts. Within the hour, I uploaded a single PDF to a private folder, titled plainly, Continuity and Compliance, red lines, FY24. It was 132 pages. Each change tracked, dated and sourced. Every unauthorized redline, every skipped approval, every backdoor edit Lila had made in the system without routing it through proper review. She'd touched protocols she didn't even understand, modifying SOC reporting language, stripping multi-signature triggers, erasing redundancy checks because they looked cluttered. But the one that sealed it? Page 58. Section 9.1 of the Internal Control Transfer Log, a required signatory field, one that validated dual approval on client implementation changes, was removed. Deleted by L. Benton, 14 days before a system control failure exposed a data sync issue that resulted in a $1.2 million penalty. The company ate the cost quietly at the time, blaming process gaps. But now the paper trail was illuminated in a surgical spotlight, not out of revenge, not out of spite, just truth, clean, cold, unarguable. When they opened the document, I know exactly how it felt, like swallowing glass. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was worse, it was precise. Every page was dated, annotated, cross-referenced with policy. There were no opinions, no narratives, just a slow, methodical unveiling of someone who played adult with other people's livelihoods. An hour later, I got another call, this time from legal. The voice on the line was softer, almost embarrassed. Dana, the board has reviewed your documentation. There is unanimous agreement that your termination was in violation of both the client agreement and internal compliance protocols. I let the silence stretch. We'd like to discuss terms of reinstatement, he said, slower now. Direct reporting to the board. Independent advisory capacity. I said nothing for a full 5 seconds. Then, you'll get my terms in writing. Because I wasn't coming back as a name on the org chart. I wasn't here to play office politics or clean up messes with duct tape anymore. I'd already done that. Quietly. For 9 years. And all it took to erase me was a click and a cardboard box. Now they'd read every word I ever wrote. And they understood the difference between an employee and a condition. The logbook didn't scream. It didn't accuse, it didn't threaten, it simply documented the fall. The formal offer came in a sealed envelope, hand-delivered by a courier who didn't meet my eyes and didn't say a word. The letterhead was board-issued, not from the CEO's office. That was their first olive branch, cutting out the middleman who had allowed the fire to start in the first place. The opening sentence was pure corporate theater, but the second line mattered. Effective immediately, you are reinstated under the revised title of Senior Continuity Advisor, reporting directly to the Board Compliance Committee. No dotted lines, no middle layers, no detours through inflated titles or fragile egos. I answered only to the people who signed the checks and who now finally understood whose signature mattered more. The rest of the letter was surgical, a 3-year protection clause embedded into the client contract. Any modifications to my role required joint sign-off from the board and external legal counsel. My access restored. My authority codified. My name, for the first time, written in ink instead of whispered in hallways. They didn't ask me to return to my old desk. Instead, they offered a dedicated office 2 floors above my previous one, away from the buzz of operations, outfitted for client-level work. No badge required to enter, biometric access only, the kind of change you don't advertise but everyone notices. And Lila? She didn't get fired. Not exactly, but her title was stripped down to something that sounded like a LinkedIn purgatory. External Engagement Coordination. No strategic, no operations. Just vague enough to sound important, but with a scope limited to event calendars and corporate gift baskets. Her access to internal systems? Revoked. Her permissions to modify documents? Suspended. Compliance? Off limits. She could book a venue, but she couldn't touch a policy again if she begged. I heard she cried in the restroom for 20 minutes after the board meeting, not because she lost her job, but because she finally realized it was never hers to begin with. The CEO, predictably, tried to salvage face. He requested a meeting. I accepted it, but only on my floor, in my office, during my hours. He walked in sheepish, no assistant, no rehearsed charm, just a father trying to mend a disaster of his own design. I want to offer you a public apology, he said, on behalf of the company, for how this was handled. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I shook my head once. No. He blinked. No. Not interested in theater, I said. I want structure, documentation, prevention. He nodded slowly, realizing the difference between a headline and a legacy. They issued a new internal protocol the next day. Clause 12A, now known informally as the Carver Clause. No personnel termination shall occur without legal confirmation of contract dependencies, including all SOW and MSA provisions relevant to continuity, risk, or compliance. I didn't walk back into that building like a hero. There was no standing ovation, no welcome balloons, just a quiet shift in the air when people saw me again. Something between respect and caution. And that was fine. Let them remember what silence can do. Because when you spend your career keeping systems from falling apart, you learn how to build one that doesn't need applause, just boundaries, just clarity, and a name that no one will ever dare erase again. 2 weeks later, the renewal was finalized. Quietly, without the usual internal celebration or champagne emails, no LinkedIn banner, no all-hands announcement from the CEO. Just 3 signatures at the bottom of a digital contract that kept $275 million moving through the company's veins for another year. Mine was the first. Dana Carver, Senior Continuity Advisor. Below mine were the CFO and the General Counsel. No VP, no Lila. I signed it at 8:16 a.m. out of habit more than symbolism. But when I saw the timestamp echo across the audit trail, I didn't change it. Let it land exactly where it should. The same hour, the same minute. The moment that froze a boardroom and reminded a company where its foundation really was. I didn't say much in the aftermath. I didn't need to. The internal memo went out that afternoon. Subject line, updated protocol. Personnel transition compliance. Buried near the bottom was the language that mattered. No personnel terminations may occur without legal confirmation of contract dependencies, including all MSA SOW-linked continuity clauses. They wrote it like policy. I read it like a monument. And the office? It didn't look the same anymore. People spoke softer when I walked by. Project managers who used to roll their eyes when I asked about sign-offs now sent confirmations before I even pinged. Even legal double-checked their own workflows when my name was involved. But it was the 3rd floor that really drove it home. That was Lila's floor, or had been. I passed by her glass-walled office one afternoon on the way to a meeting. The blinds were open, the desk stripped bare, no monitor, no chair, not even a pen. Just a single frame sitting dead center on the glass. Inside, it was a printout. The 8:16 a.m. email. Subject. Material contractual concern. Carver engagement status. I stood there a moment, not smiling, not gloating, just acknowledging that timestamp had done more damage than any speech ever could. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just final. Some people fight fire with fire. I prefer paper. And sometimes you don't need to raise your voice. Sometimes all it takes is a timestamp.